In Jordan, you go to the desert, you go to the mountains, you go to the seas, you go to the Dead Sea and float. But then you get to mingle with the communities and learn from them. You understand that there are people like you, and they have a rich history. They have stories to tell. You learn from each other when you're traveling. So don't just stick to what the media is feeding you. Break away from that.
Welcome to One in Tribe. I am your host, Julie Fidalgo, and today I am joined by Zein Ghanma. Zein is a Jordanian independent consultant and coach specializing in public speaking and leadership presence. Zein has worked extensively with political leaders, decision makers, business people, bankers, entrepreneurs, and media personnel. Her clientele includes members of ruling Arab royal families, Arab cabinet ministers, politicians, British, European, and Arab diplomats, as well as CEOs, executives, and business leaders. Prior to turning to consulting, she taught presentation skills at the German Jordanian University and served as an instructor of theater and drama at Yarmouk University in Jordan for 7 years. Zein is a co-founder and board member of Al Balad Theater in Jordan. Welcome to the show, Zein.
Thank you, Julie.
I'm so happy to have you here with me today. And you are calling in from Amman, Jordan, correct?
Yes, true.
And tell us a little bit. I always like to start at the very beginning. Tell me where you were born and where your parents are from, where your family comes from.
All right. I'm from Jordan. My parents are from Jordan, from the same hometown, Hassan in the north. I was born in Zarqa, where my father was posted. He was an officer in the army. And when I was born, he was there. I'm number 4 out of 8 children.
Mashallah.
We lived mostly in Zarqa, in the east of Amman, for most of my childhood. And then when my father retired, we returned to our hometown. And I lived there until I got married. But we have been, my father was posted in different places, and I have early memories of his posting in Ramallah in Palestine when I was 3.
Ooh, I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I could remember the highlights, I suppose. And I knew I was 3 because my youngest brother was around 6 months. We were there in spring, summer, because we would go out for walks with my mom, and we would push him in the carriage. He could not walk, and so I figured I must have just turned 3 when we were there. It was the time when just pre-occupation, and the highlights were always going out for walks in the evenings and buying peanuts. And once in a while, we would get lost because, especially early on, when we would go out for walks and new home, so we would get lost sometimes. And my memories there were mainly of the sirens, because the troubles were starting then. And I just remember all of us being caught in the siren in the street, and we would just hide behind cars until it's gone and it's free to move about and go home. That was mainly my memory of Ramallah. But then again, before the occupation, we would go for visits. My parents would take us during Christmas, Easter, all the religious holidays to for the festivities in the Holy Land. And those were lovely, actually.
So, a couple of things. You are Christian,
Yeah.
and we are going to talk about what it's like being Christian in Jordan because Jordan is a majority Muslim country.
Yes.
But also for our audience, Ramallah is in the West Bank, correct?
Yes.
In present day Israel. So the memories that you're talking about was pre-Israel, correct?
Yeah. When we lived in Ramallah, I was just 3, and those are the only memories I have. But then later on, we would go for visits, as I said, and we would go for all the festivities. And my parents were very sociable. They made friends with the shopkeepers, souvenir shopkeepers, with the nuns, and it was hardly an hour to cross the Jordan River for this trip. And we would just drive back and forth. It was just one country. To us, this was a part of Jordan. We called it the West Bank because it's the west bank of the River Jordan. And we were living on the East Bank, but it was one. And it was just fun times. It was safe times. I remember I used to get lost a lot, not just in Ramallah when I was 3, but later on with the crowds. You can imagine around the churches how many people were visiting for all the religious occasions, and people were just coming in and out. And I remember one time when I remember going out with my family out of a church. And then for some reason, I sat on a bench. And then I saw them, all of them, walking up really narrow stairs, very high stairs, going up and disappearing behind a door. I was just sitting there watching, and people were coming in and out of the church, crowds. And I'm just waiting there, waiting. And then after a bit, they emerged. They came down and they found me, and we just went together. I thought, they didn't miss me. Then we were 6, so, but still got lost in the crowd. But it was just so safe. And I was just sitting there for probably 10-20 minutes when after they went to visit the nuns, and they had tea and all of that. But it was lovely, and I feel that it's what a shame that it's not the same place as it was then. How safe it was, and how joyful, wonderful, beautiful it was. And now children's childhood is stolen from them. It's not safe, it's not fair, it's heartbreaking. But I cherish those memories, and I carry them with me. I haven't been back. I didn't visit since the occupation. I don't know if I will. I would like to keep that memory, the beautiful memory, and hope for the best for all the Palestinians.
Yeah. One thing is that prior to all of this, the occupation, is that all 3 religions used to live together in peace.
Yes, if you leave people alone, they will make it. Once politics and meddling happens, then it's not just up to those people to continue peacefully and thrive. There are many interests, outside interests, and oppression that messes up all of this. But leave it naturally, it'll be beautiful. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. So, and then when did you end up? You said you haven't been back since the occupation, but is that when you moved back to Jordan?
Oh,
Or
No, I've been back to Jordan since my father returned from the posting in Ramallah, and we stayed for a long time in Zarqa until he retired. So I've been living in Jordan. I only went to study in England and the States, but then I've been living in Jordan. And before the occupation, we would be just going for trips.
Oh, it was visits. I'm sorry, it was
Yeah,
visits.
yeah.
Okay, wanted to just make sure I'm clear. And then you studied in DC, correct?
Yes, I did my master's in DC in theater. But earlier on, I went to Yarmouk University, which is in the north. It was just 7 minutes away from my hometown, so that was very convenient. It was a new university, and I started studying chemistry, but then I figured out that was not for me, and I switched to English literature and education. But then when I switched, one of my professors asked me to be in a play with the other students. It was an extracurricular activity that this particular professor, who came from England, would do to improve our English and to enrich, the understanding and of literature. So even though I was quite shy, but I said, yeah, sure. And that I discovered myself. I thought, this is what I want to do. And there was an opportunity for me to go to England for a summer course in acting before graduating. So I did. And that's when it really clicked. And when I came back to finish my last year, it was by luck that the university was planning to start a fine arts department and theater under fine arts. So they were looking for people to teach. I thought that was my opportunity. I applied. They were looking for people to send them on scholarship to come back and teach. So I applied. And I started applying to universities in the States because I knew the program I wanted was there, which is practical and academic, where you can teach when you graduate and you can work in the theater. So I found a program that was in DC. I applied and I got accepted and I went. I did theater directing and then came back to teach at university and direct plays with the students.
How fun. I was in Jordan recently, a few months ago, and I was quite shocked at the amount of universities I saw in the country. And I feel like every time we were driving, we would drive by a university. And that was something, I don't want to sound ignorant, but I was shocked with the amount of universities in the country.
Yeah, look, when I was born, the population, I think, was less than 1 million. Now it's over 11 million.
Wow.
So these people, and education is well cherished, and it's important for us. So people want to study. There are public universities. The one I went to was a state university. And then private universities started popping up to cater for a larger audience. And they're not always, not all students are just from Jordan. There are students from the Gulf. And generally, the health sector and education is well regarded in Jordan. And they're full. So everybody is studying, and the population, as I said, just increased organically, and with the refugees, people displaced from different countries because of all the wars around. Yeah, they are all functioning and accepting students. And they're diversifying, and they're, introducing not just the usual traditional subjects to teach. There's a lot of technical and artistic subjects to cater for the market so that people can find work, hopefully. It's difficult, but it's better.
And also, I think there might be some, people, again, this podcast is for people of the West that are not very familiar with the Arab world. And I think people need to know also that women are very, very highly educated in that part of the world, where there is this misconception that they're not.
Yeah, absolutely. There is that misconception. And you will find that top graduates many of them are girls. I don't want to say all of them, but the education is respected and well regarded, and people do send the women, girls, they go to school, they go to universities, they're working, and they're establishing their own companies. So that is something that girls are given the freedom to do. There are some limitations in some parts of Jordan, farther away from the centers, where the girls are educated, but work opportunities are not that many. Many of them I have trained went down south or east, north, west, and I found girls with master's degrees looking for opportunities for themselves to create something, even if it's not exactly the subject they studied, but they would try to find ways to become a part of the workforce. It's difficult in some areas, but people are ambitious and they're hardworking and dedicated. So so we are a very educated population.
Wow. And let me ask you, are the universities, are there schools for, like, do Christians and Muslims go to the same school, or are they separate?
Well, schools, there are both.
Okay.
There are the state schools, the private schools, and the Christian schools. Churches, they established their own schools. When I was young, I went to one. It was in outside we lived in Zarqa when my father was in the army. We lived in a compound, an officer's compound. When I was 4 and 5, I went to the Catholic school outside the compound. We used to go by bus. Then my parents decided bring them back we had schools inside the compound, and that was great because we could walk to school. And we got to drop one of the subjects. We used to learn religion, Christian religion. In the state schools then and the army schools, they only taught Islamic religion, which meant Christians, we were like 3 or 4 in each class, do not have to attend. That was great. We could get out and play. But really, when it rained, we stayed in. And we had the most wonderful teacher, the Arabic teacher, Miss Najla. I can still remember her, remember what she looked like, and how wonderful she was. And the stories we listened to when they were teaching the Islamic religion, because it was raining, we stayed in, so we got to listen to the stories. And it's history, it's stories, it's ethics. And it was just fun. Later on, they introduced Christian religion in state schools, but I never learned it because it wasn't offered in the schools when I was studying. But it was just the funny thing. Miss Najla is from the Druze sect, so things were so simple then and so relaxed. To have someone from the Druze sect teaching the Islamic religion is like normal. They're a different sect, but she was not indoctrinating anything special, different, biased, nothing. It was just the basic, pure ethics, the stories, and it's just beautiful for everyone. And now you would look, oh, they're talking about Shia, Druze, Sunni, this and that, and they got everyone meddling in everyone's business and, turned them against each other. But that was the time of my childhood. It was just lovely having the friends. Of course, most of my friends are Muslim because most of the population is Muslim. But did we ever talk about religion? No. It's just not a subject, not at least in my environment. We accepted each other, we lived together beautifully, and we're very similar. We have the same traditions, the same culture. A few, they celebrate Ramadan and Eid, and we celebrate Christmas and Easter, but that's neither here nor there. So it was just very simple, very loving environment. Later on, with also, again, outside influence, you started seeing a little bit more of the extremes. But then, generally, you would not mingle with the extremes from either side. And the state does not tolerate any problems created for anyone. So we feel safe. We live together normally. It's just peaceful and respectful. And if someone is not respectful, it's just outside of the group. So, but no clashes, no violence, nothing. I think because of the state and the laws and all that, they're protective of everyone. So we're living peacefully together.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
So you said you have a lot of Muslim friends, and that's because you went to the state school, and you had mentioned that there were only about 3 or 4 Christians per class. Now, for those that attend the Christian school, are they more segregated from the Muslims, or do they eventually all integrate? Obviously, in society, they have to integrate, but growing up, if somebody attended a Christian school their entire lives, do they only come? Are their circle of friends only going to be Christians for the most part? I know I'm making a generalization.
No, it's okay. I mean, you would think so. The thing is, Muslims send their children to Christian schools. So they're all mixed. Okay, maybe there are more Christians in Christian schools, but everybody goes and they teach both languages now. Both religions. But they mingle, and they might have, some people might have more friends in this more than that, but no, everybody goes to school together now, and their religion classes are separate, and they're mingling normally, and they might become friends for life. So it's quite relaxed.
Good. And why would a Muslim family send their child to a Christian school? Like, what are some reasons?
I don't know. I assume sometimes it's very close by.
Okay.
sometimes maybe the standards are high, or if they wanted, because earlier on the private schools, I think they were all just the Christian schools. So, and they taught English from an early age, and the standards were high. And if it's the school next door, well, send your child to it. And people continued to send them to whatever they choose. Yeah, there is no reason why not to.
Okay.
Because they're not being indoctrinated in anything that contradicts their traditions and religion. So there's no reason not to.
Okay. And then how did you meet your husband?
I was teaching at Yarmouk University, and I had a friend there, a professor of math, who every year he would have a Christmas party in the mountains of Anja, and he would invite me. But then it was always the wrong time. Either it was before Christmas Day or on Christmas Day or whatever Friday he was free and the friends, then that's Christmas. Until that day, that year, 1 year, it was like a week before Christmas, so it was convenient. And when I went, and there I met my husband. And I have to say that this friend, he's Muslim, but he was celebrating with all his friends and everyone because it's a festive time. He was holding a Christmas party every year. So that's how it is. People just get together and, like-minded people, they're open-minded, they're educated, they're open, they don't have prejudices. So we celebrate together, like we celebrate Ramadan with the Muslims. And we can't wait till Ramadan comes so that we eat the pastry, atayef. And when we were young, we sometimes thought, there's a challenge for me. I need to fast, like my Muslim friends. It was quite challenging. And I tried a couple of times. I could never make it to the end of the day. It's hard.
It is. I tried it once.
Yeah, especially if it's summer with the long days. But this is how it is with both people, everyone just living together without any outside influence and meddling. Yeah, people would live happily. But then the king and the state is quite protective of everyone. Everyone feels safe, and that's very important.
Yeah, I felt very safe in Jordan. I mean, the idea of danger never even crossed my mind. It was, yeah. And is your husband, I'm assuming, Christian?
Yeah, he is. He's Palestinian. His family comes from Nazareth. Okay. He was born before 48. He was born in 47. And his father went to the States. Many people would go and work there. His father went to work, so the family went, and they stayed there. Later on, his dad worked with the UN, and they were going different places besides New York. And they stayed until he retired. Then he was offered the American citizenship, the Iraqis, because he worked there, the Lebanese, probably other European country, but he decided that he would settle in Jordan after he retired and get the Jordanian nationality. He refused to get the Israeli nationality because he would have to go back to Nazareth. That was already occupied. So he stayed. My husband was living most of the time in Beirut, but he was coming to visit his mom. So that's the Christmas he came to visit, and that's when we met.
Okay.
And then we continued to settle here.
Wow. That's a beautiful story. So it was a Christmas miracle.
I suppose. Yeah.
Great. So you touched a little bit upon the culture of Muslims and Christians. Are there differences? You basically said there are not, correct? Or are there any cultural differences between Christians and Muslims?
In Jordan, in my circle at least, but generally, I mean, we have the same history, we're the same traditions. The difference is the religion, the celebrations. You might find more conservative people from either side, but the traditions do not differ so much. So you don't feel that difference. You would be having conversations and having friends and getting together and enjoying everything. So there isn't that segregation, that stark difference. But then each family is different and they have their own rules and restrictions. So it depends on how traditional they are and how they want to preserve that. So they might not mingle with other people, but generally, sometimes you don't even know who is Christian, who is Muslim. Sometimes you could tell from the name, but for most people, no. There's a lot of stuff in common, and so life is, there's harmony, and you don't find any stark differences or clashes. And each respects their other's own things.
What would you say is one of your favorite traditions?
Oh, traditions. There's something in rural areas. It was mostly rural anyway, but there's something called Aone, which is community support. When someone is building a house, everybody would help him. Somebody's getting married, there is help. Even in death, there is help. But so there is this community support that used to be in past times in rural areas mainly. But what we're doing with it now is taking it a notch up. There's someone who has started something similar. It's called Zikra Initiative, where he went to very poor areas in the Jordan Valley and started exchanging expertise, helping them use what their traditions in cooking, in tourism, to bring in the city people and exchange ideas and learn from each other, and at the same time help them do things. And of course, there are societies that go to the same thing. It's the community support where they recognize that there is deficiency somewhere, and they would get together and help that community. What we're doing further with this now is Al Baraka wheat, where this same person, Rabbi Ezraat, is bringing back planting wheats, which is really, this is what we did. Wheat was exported to Rome. They used to say Rome ate from the wheat of northern Jordan, southern Syria, because those plains were always full of wheat. That's where I come from, and wheat was everywhere, and it's great wheat. So what we're doing is preserving the seeds, the local seeds, and then together we locate lands, empty lands, with the owners of these lands. We would just take it. They would give it to us, and we would plant it with the wheat. Families come, kids, everyone. We would just go and plant the seeds in these areas, and then we go and harvest them, and then we have our own wheat, where we also donate some of that to people in need. The flour is very much needed. So we have this ONE, this community support is turning into something even more important and better to preserve this tradition of planting wheat and having your own flour, and encouraging people to work the land and have their own food, because food security is an issue. So, and many people are, they're not doing anything with the land, and that is one passion of mine. I grew up with the land and harvesting and planting, and especially when we moved back to my hometown, it's very important. And when there is also some sort of preservation of tradition and culture, it's even better. And then helping other communities to sustain them, because this is what the wheat, the El Baraka wheat, is doing. It's a community collaboration for community support. I think that is one of the traditions. I'm not a traditional person, but this thing is, it's in the heart of our traditions, the goodness of the people and the land. You give the land, it gives you double, and then you share it.
I love that. And it explains why bread is eaten so much in that part of the world.
Yes. And now we make all sorts.
Yes. So now let's move on to your personal career life. You are currently a consultant for public speaking. How did you get into that? How did you transition into that from theater?
It's a natural transition. I didn't know then. I went to university not knowing what I wanted to do or be. Just wanted to go to university. And then, as I said, I changed from chemistry to English. And then when I went to England with my first voice and speech class, I thought, this is something everyone should learn. How to use their voice. And then I put it in the back of my mind, because I was into theater, continued studies, and went back and I taught and directed for 7 years. And then the idea came back again. I knew it was time for me to do something different. And the idea was there, but, very difficult to start an idea. And back then, the startup culture was not there at all. Anyway, so I decided this is what I want to do. I was very frightened. I left university, and of course that was like, how do you leave university? Secure job and pay and all of that and prestige. But I knew that's it. I need to do something else. And I knew deep down this is needed. So I started talking to people, shyly putting an ad in the newspaper, sending a fax. There was no email then, and just advertising. So at the beginning was quite difficult, and people would get upset if they get a fax, thinking, why are you sending me this fax? Did you see me not speak well? And are you going to teach us how to speak? So it was that kind of resistance. But then I persevered. I knew, and I would go to lectures and I see people how they're PhDs and they're knowledgeable, but the way they're presenting is just, they had no awareness, no control. So I knew people needed this. And I just kept going. One of my earliest clients was the British number two. He was a neighbor, and I was discussing this with him. And he said, I want to be your first one-on-one client. And that really gave me a push. And I started with small groups. And then towards the end of the 90s, globalization happened and everybody was coming and going, and seminars and workshops and conferences. And then those same people started saying, why are the foreigners speaking better than us? And then they would come and seek help. And I'm just saying, it's just, they're trained. So let's get you trained. So it caught on, and started with small groups, and then companies would come and word of mouth, because then that was mainly the best way to advertise. I stayed individual, working individually, consulting with everyone actually, working for myself, especially that I started having babies. So I needed some time to myself and them. So I liked that freedom. But then it expanded, and I was traveling for coaching and training, and people would come and seek my advice and guidance. And I've been doing this for a long time now. It's never boring. It's always changing. With every client, there's something new to explore. And that is one of the things that sustained me, is that I listened to my clients. I knew what they needed at the beginning, but then I started to get to know what they needed even more, and I started expanding my portfolio to cater to everyone.
The importance of communication and connecting with people, so much of it is our voice, how we articulate, the vocal variety. And I think these are things that, and I know this because I also had my little stint with acting, and I also took voice classes, and to be able to project all of these things people are not aware of. They think, oh, this is the voice I was born with. There's nothing I can do. But really, the way that you speak is so important in the way that we communicate.
Yes, and the most interesting thing is when we talk about breathing, because the root of many problems is breathing, or lack of breathing, or not being aware of your breathing, because voice is initially breath. So how to it's all connected. Your breathing, your centering, and being mindful, and your body and mind and psyche and voice and movement, they're all harmonious. And that needs awareness. You need a specialist. If you don't discover it yourself, some people discover it by themselves. They're brilliant. But most of us learn it. And I have gone through the whole thing, not to become a public speaker, but to become an actor. And then I took that a step up. Of course, it's very different because in acting, I'm hiding behind a character. In some ways, that was safe. I could be mad and crazy and do all sorts of things, but it's not me. I'm hiding behind that character. Then when you get up and share your thoughts, you're totally exposed and you need to handle that. So yeah, voice, movement, mind, they need to be in sync. And that is a skill one learns. We're not born speaking, so we learned all that. And we built up habits that sometimes they're not the right ones. And we need to amend, sort of, and then acquire those new habits in order to connect and connect cognitively and emotionally. And that needs a lot of awareness in order for you to be spontaneous. If you don't have that awareness, you don't know how the spontaneous will happen. It might not always be the right one. So there's a lot of work one needs to do, but since speaking is a physiological act, then we can do it. We just get a hold of this body and the muscles, and then we'll be fine.
And speaking is a performance.
Yes, it is. But as I tell everyone, there are different levels of communicating. When you're at home, being totally relaxed and spontaneous, and then when you're in a play where you're not you, you have a costume, these are not your words, and these are not your thoughts, you're performing totally artistically. But then the daily communication, especially at work, it's in the middle. You take that spontaneity from life and then take the skill from art. Put them together, and then you're basically performing, but you are you, and you're genuine, but you have the skills. So that's the balance that we need to reach and work within that middle circle that has its own rules. Like you and I now, there are things we cannot do. We have to sit a certain way, speak a certain way, etc. We're performing in a way, but we are genuine. And each medium has its own limitations or rules.
Yeah, one thing about acting, I wanted to perform, but as myself. I didn't want to have to play other characters. So I think this is why I'm loving podcasting, because I get to be me and engage in authentic conversations with others and connect and communicate, which I love. But I get to do it as Julie Fidalgo.
Yeah, okay, you're lucky. When I started, or let me put it this way, I'm usually very shy. I'm just a shy introvert. I don't know how I was thrown into this, but here I am. When I was in freshman year, first year at university, I was taking one-on-one Arabic, as everybody does, and we were asked to present a report. So back then, go to the library, write, summarize, blah, 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 draft, throw it, and give the final draft. And that was it. So the professor said, in 2 days, you come back and present it orally. And I was just, how can I do that? I don't have any of the drafts. And I don't remember what I wrote. I couldn't wait till I gave it to forget it. It was something I had to do. But anyway, so for 2 days, I was thinking, what should I do? What should I say? What is the first thing? I just could not bring any thoughts together. And then I decided I do what I can do. I know how to do. I skipped class. So I skipped class and I failed 101 Arabic. Who fails 101 Arabic?
Wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, there was no way that I could stand in front of my class. We were like 12 and we were all friends, but to talk about something, I was not used to it. And I really had no thoughts in my mind. And I just sailed through without giving any presentation. I hardly raised my hand to answer a question. But then 2 years later, when my professor asked me to be in a play, I was like, yeah, sure. I don't know how, it just happened. And that's where I started learning everything and sort of opening up and discovering my voice and being thrusted on stage and performing and being somebody else. And that then led me slowly. It was a gradual progression, but generally still I would not thrust myself in front of a camera or on stage unless I knew I had something to say. When I knew my purpose and I'm passionate about it, I would do it. Other than that, I'm very quiet. I like to garden and prune trees and read and sit by myself. I'm not that person who wants to be out there all the time. But I know when I have that passionate purpose, I just get ready for it and I do it.
Wow. Well, let's talk quickly about Bookboon. It's a virtual audio learning program that you are a part of.
Yes, it started. It's not Dutch, Danish English platform. It started as virtual books, and then they decided to do little talks, expert talks they call them, and then they expanded to. They're in many languages, and then recently they expanded to Arabic. And I was contacted through LinkedIn to contribute. So I started recording 10 to 15 minute voice recording on different subjects that have to do with communication, public speaking, leadership presence, my specialty. And they're on that website. People subscribe to it. Companies subscribe for their audience, for their employees, and then individuals do. So that was my first into the videos that I do now on Instagram and LinkedIn. I thought I should start doing that. Just little tips that have to do with public speaking.
And you do it in Arabic for Bookboon?
Bookboon is in Arabic, yes.
In Arabic, okay.
My videos are in both, sometimes English, sometimes Arabic, because my audience is both.
Okay. Well, Zein, our time is coming to an end, but before we go, I always like to ask my guest if there is something they want to share with our audience about the Arab world or about Jordan, or maybe a misconception of the Arab world. We touched a little bit upon misconceptions, but is there anything that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah. I suppose there's the misconception that the Arab world is a war zone and they're backward and they're oppressive and all of that. But I would like to ask everyone to enlighten themselves, get to know the different parts of Jordan and the Arab world, because we're diverse. We're a mixture of people and traditions and cultures and history that is not to be missed. There's a lot of genuine tradition. There's a lot of beauty in Jordan and the rest of the Arab world. Each country has its own In Jordan, you go to the desert, you go to the mountains, you go to the seas, you go to the Dead Sea and float. But then you get to mingle with the communities and learn from them. You understand that there are people like you, and they have a rich history. They have stories to tell. You learn from each other when you're traveling. So don't just stick to what the media is feeding you. Break away from that. Go and be critical and learn yourself so that you don't miss all the riches we have. And welcome to Jordan. Let me know when you come, any of you listening, because there is a lot to see, a lot of people. The hospitality that you find here is just unmatched.
Unmatched. And Jordan, my trip to Jordan was, well, it inspired me to do this podcast, but Petra and Wadi Rum and Mqais, where you get to see Syria and Lebanon and Palestine, Israel, it's stunning. It's absolutely, your country is amazing. And I hope that people will take a trip.
Yes.
Lastly, Zein, where can our audience find you? Where can they connect with you?
Well, I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn, less on Facebook, but I'm there under my name, Zein Ghanma. And any connection is welcomed.
Great. Thank you so much for being a guest on One in Tribe. It was a pleasure getting to know you, and I hope that in the future, when I take my next trip to Jordan, we can meet in person.
Definitely. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Zein. Thank you so much.
Thank you.